welcoming Dr. Ellie Zarrabian, host of From Chaos to Connection, growing from pain toward community. Are you ready to make the most of your challenges while moving ahead with your dreams? Do you want your spiritual growth to be part of your healing while living your life with purpose? On Chaos to Connection, you will find resources to transform your difficulties into connections with others. Change is achievable. Dr. Ellie helps you make change both within and in the world. Learn to heal past traumas, become more self-assured, and take action in the world. No matter your spiritual background or cultural heritage, we will work together to transform pain and trauma to community and well-being. You can make this world a better place, starting with yourself. From Chaos to Connection starts now.
Hello and welcome. This is Dr. Ellie Zarrabian, and this is my show, From Chaos to Connection. If you're interested in the topic of personal growth and building better relationships at home and out in the world, then you're definitely in the right place. Last time, in my first episode, I talked about the challenges that we are faced with these days with all that's happening in and around the world. Given that these are some unprecedented times that we're facing, learning to live with more balance, care, and peace of mind is crucial. I shared with you 3 skills that you can adopt and be able to build inner strength and resilience during tough times. And you can watch that recording on my website, or if you just scroll down, you'll see it posted right here on my Facebook page. Also, know that you can always leave your questions or comments in the chat box below, and I will be happy to respond accordingly. In the last episode, I talked about incorporating spirituality, movement, and radical honesty into your day-to-day life so that you may become stronger and build resistance against stress, worry, anxiety, and depression. I think you would agree that as a global community, we could all use some help so that we can stay afloat and get through these challenging years, and maybe even grow as a result of all that's going on. In the last episode, I also shared with you some of my own personal journey around resilience and how I was able to bypass a whole host of problems like mental illness, addiction, and poor health. Today, I want to talk to you about avoiding the effects of trauma when you're dealing with difficult life situations like conflict and natural disasters. Most of us are experiencing conflict on some level or another in our life. Whether it's having conflict with a spouse or a family member at home, or experiencing conflict taking place in the community, or watching it get played out in the world at large. Many of us, including myself, have also been affected by natural disasters like the floods or earthquakes. Through all this, it's important that we not incur trauma. Trauma results from exposure to an incident or series of events that are emotionally disturbing or life-threatening. Trauma can have a lasting negative impact on an individual's functioning, like their mental, physical, social, emotional, and/or spiritual health and well-being. Because there is so much conflict happening in and around us, from our personal relationships to our global relationships, from our political leaders to our religious leaders, from our climate issues to our health issues, the likelihood of developing symptoms of trauma on a global scale is very high. That's why we have to do our best and do our share to be very diligent about taking good care of ourselves so that we don't fall prey to the debilitating effects of trauma. My point here is not to bring you down or to put fear in you. Rather, it's to show you that with just a little bit of awareness and effort, you too can divert much of the problems that I mentioned earlier. By collectively slowing down, learning these tools, and applying them to daily life, we can make a difference in our own life as well as the life of loved ones around us. As I mentioned in the last episode, Even though I had been through some extreme difficulties in my own life, I have also been able to avoid quite a bit of trauma. And that's because I have worked extremely hard at mitigating the potential effects of trauma. And today I want to teach you 3 of those skills. So allow me to share these skills with you so that you can help yourself reduce and perhaps even bypass the effects of trauma. Psychologists are always interested in why some people can have very difficult life experiences and still do fine, while others who don't have as many difficulties can become so severely traumatized. How does that work exactly? Well, research shows that behavior follows thinking. So, whatever your day-to-day thoughts are about your life and yourself in general, that is for sure the reality you're going to see and expect in your life. That's why people who are generally more optimistic or positive thinkers tend to see their life as half full, and those who are generally less optimistic or more pessimistic tend to see their life as half empty. In other words, how we think or view ourselves and our life is exactly the life we create for ourselves. Our thoughts create our reality. One of the ways I was able to get through my difficult childhood and even be protected from the traumatic outcomes of war, discrimination, death, and destruction was to learn to shift the way I thought and saw my life. I had a wonderful teacher when I was very young, and through storytelling, he taught me that if I look at a situation from a different vantage point or perspective, I would actually be able to see the magic behind the ordinary, and in fact, even be able to see the extraordinary in life. Children tend to do this more naturally. We call it magical thinking as adults, but there is an actual psychological benefit to doing this. It's a way to reduce harm or to avoid becoming overwhelmed and even traumatized. It's also a way to learn by removing oneself from a difficult, painful, or harmful situation mentally and looking at the world with a different set of eyeglasses. We get to learn about ourselves, the situation, and even come up with creative solutions on how to best deal with or tackle what's going on. Another way to describe what I'm talking about here is to say that you can look at a situation from 2 different vantage points. You can either stand right there in the thick of it all, or you can mentally remove yourself from the situation and observe what's going on from a distance. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you think that you would feel differently about your situation if you looked at it differently? So let's say right now you're standing right in the middle of the situation that you're faced with and witnessing what's happening around you. You're most likely going to feel the impact of the events in a very personal way or as though it's happening to you directly. Chances are you would feel overwhelmed, frustrated, disappointed, angry, and even depressed. Now, see if you can view the same situation while visualizing yourself standing on top of a hill and watching what's going on down below from a distance. From the top of the hill, you'll most likely say that a situation is occurring down below and you're just watching it. Also, from the top of the hill, you're not seeing yourself as a victim of what's going on. Nothing is happening to you. Rather, you're just witnessing what's going on. This is the vantage point you want to take around conflict. Here's a personal example. In the last episode, I shared with you that I experienced quite a bit of violence in my childhood as my country was going through a religious revolution and war. As a child, watching angry mobs form everywhere to protest and attempt to overthrow the government can be a very scary experience for anyone, let alone a child. But I learned very early on to look at the situation from a different vantage point and to come up with a different explanation for what I was seeing. So rather than think that the situation was horrific and that I was going to get hurt or something bad was going to happen to my family, I saw the situation as the people trying to tell a story about what's happening in their life, and that I was just watching and trying to figure out what that story was all about. This is a very subtle but powerful difference. With one, you're internalizing the situation as though it's happening to you directly. With the other, you're externalizing the situation and seeing it as a story that's unfolding in front of you. So whatever is happening is not about you, and nothing is going to happen to you. You're just the observer. Again, this subtle difference in perception can make or break the difference between staying healthy and becoming traumatized. I would love to hear your experience after you tried this exercise, so feel free to message me and let me know if you tried it and if you noticed anything interesting or different. But first, let's take a short break here, and you can go ahead and check out my website at Center on Peace, and we'll be right back to talk about the other ways you can mitigate the effects of trauma. See you soon. Okay, welcome back to the second half of our show. The second way that I want to talk to you about protecting yourself from the negative effects of trauma and even bypass it altogether is to have some kind of a spiritual practice. In my last episode, I talked about spirituality as a way to build inner strength through tough times. I had mentioned that having some form of a practice, and it doesn't have to be a formal religious practice, helps lessen and even alleviate symptoms of trauma. Now, if you don't have a formal religious practice or are not even religious, then a practice like mindfulness meditation is an excellent way to develop a non-religious secular practice. Mindfulness is about learning to sit still, quiet the mind, create a sense of emptiness or space inside of you, and learn to watch and observe thoughts and emotions as they come and go. It's about developing that witness that I just mentioned to you earlier, but here you're actually distancing yourself from your own thoughts and feelings, and instead you're learning to watch them rise and fall, come and go. You'll be happy to know that many physical ailments like hypertension, high blood pressure, diabetes, IBS, obesity, as well as mental health issues like depression, anxiety, and overthinking can be avoided and even remedied with a solid meditation practice. So by simply taking time out of your busy day for just 10 to 20 minutes and sitting in a quiet corner and watching and witnessing your thoughts, come and go, rise and fall, you'll actually be doing yourself a tremendous service. Again, I can't stress enough how important it is to cultivate some form of a calming and centering practice, especially during difficult times. But for those of you who are actually come from a more religious background or tradition, and you already have a religious practice, then it's crucial that you go back and rely on those practices when life gets tough. Now, we all know that religious teachings have very specific rules and guidelines, but here I'm more focused on going back to the original teachings of the prophets. It doesn't have to be anything specific, formal, elaborate, or laborious. It's just that when you're feeling anxious or nervous or distracted, you just want to go back to the basic teachings. Pick out a word, a line, a phrase that really speaks to your heart and soul, and take time to sit with those words in a quiet corner for just 10 to 20 minutes a day. Let me give you another example from my own life. Remember, I shared that I did not have any formal religious education or training, so I had to take whatever I could and work with it as best as I could. And in my early 20s, I learned how to meditate. Initially, it was very difficult for me to sit still and try to quiet my mind. I was feeling depressed and I wanted life to be different, but there was nothing to do about it and there was nowhere for me to go. I was stuck with myself, and that's when I decided to sit down and learn how to meditate. Through a lot of trial and error, I learned to meditate on the words, I am that I am. 5 small and simple words. But at first, I even struggled sitting down and doing that, repeating the words over and over in my meditation. And initially, I didn't understand what they meant, and I got bored after repeating them for a while. But I stayed true to my practice and kept at it with diligence and effort. Every day, I kept coming back to my practice and repeating these words. Along with the words, I also learned to move my body in the shape of the infinity symbol while I meditated. Okay, it's a very rhythmic motion. And at first, that too was very difficult and even strange. To be sitting still but gently rocking from side to side was tiring. I couldn't understand the point of the movement at first, but again, I kept to my practice, and every day I sat in meditation and moved my body and repeated my words. Remember, in the last episode, I talked about the importance of movement. When we move our body, we avoid building up stagnation in the mind and body. Well, before I knew it, the movement, along with the words that I kept repeating, started to shift my brain. At some point, every time I started to move my body, I could feel as though something was opening up in my brain and the mental fog was beginning to lift. Like a door that had been shut, and all of a sudden there was an opening, and I could see and feel everything with much greater clarity and sharpness. Of course, now years later, with a lot more study and understanding, I realized that what I was doing at the time was rewiring my brain. The crisscross movement or motion of my meditation was linking the left and the right hemisphere of the brain. And that's why I started to have the sensation of a door opening. And the two hemispheres had started to talk to each other. And then the words, I am that I am, were giving me a whole new and different outlook and understanding of myself and of my life. These exercises had a tremendous impact on my life, and that's why I'm recommending that you try them and see the results for yourself. The third and final approach to mitigating the effects of trauma is to do something very simple, yet very hard at the same time, and that's to practice gratitude. We all have many reasons to be grateful daily, but the human tendency is to focus on what is not working or going well rather than what is working well. So practicing gratitude is another way to rewire the brain. It's simple to think of 1 or 2 things that you're grateful for. That doesn't take much effort. But how about 10 different things? That gets a little tougher. Now, how about 10 different things to be grateful for every day, and it has to be a new list. You can't repeat the same things. That's not so easy now, is it? But that's why we want to challenge ourselves and to think more positively and to try and see the glass as half full, even when things are very chaotic around us. Practicing gratitude can really help in this process. So here's a little homework. I want to challenge you for the next 2 weeks to encourage you and challenge you to keep a gratitude journal. Every day, I want you to write down 10 things that you're grateful for in your journal. And remember, it has to be a new list, not a repeat. Once you do that, compare how you feel today to how you feel in 2 weeks. And I would be very curious to see if you find a noticeable difference in your overall mood. So please feel free to share your findings with me. Okay, so to recap everything that we've discussed on how to avoid taking on trauma, I shared 3 ways with you that you can stay mentally and emotionally strong and healthy during tough times. Number 1, learn to become a witness to the events happening around you, especially if you're dealing with conflict or natural disasters. The point is to externalize the situation rather than internalize it. Number 2, learn to develop a meditative practice, whether it's mindfulness meditation or going back to the original teachings of the prophets and picking out simple words or phrases and repeating them in your prayers or meditation practice. And finally, number 3, develop a daily practice of gratitude. Keep a journal for the next 2 weeks and notice the difference in your overall attitude and mood at that time. Feel free to message me with any questions or comments after you try these exercises. I hope you've enjoyed today's topic and found it helpful. Be sure to like our page and tune in 2 weeks for our next episode. I'm Dr. Ellie Zarrabian, and you have been watching the Transformation Network, From Chaos to Connection.
You have been listening to Dr. Ellie Zarrabian, host of From Chaos to Connection. Tune in every second and fourth Monday at 2 p.m. Pacific on TransformationTalkRadio.com for more resources and tools to help with healing on your journey of life. You can impact the globe in the most powerful way possible. Whatever your spiritual background and cultural heritage is, you can transform pain and trauma into building community and connection. Join Dr. Ellie in identifying what you need to heal within and in our world. For more information, visit centeronpeace.com. That's centeronpeace.com.